Cigar, take 2.1. Welcome to Music and Cigars with John and JR. I'm John Spittle.
I'm JR McNeely. How you doing?
And today we have Mark Burchfield, amazing session bass player, producer. JR is going to tell you a little bit about him.
All right, so Mark Burchfield moved to Nashville in 1982 to pursue a career as a professional bassist. He began touring and recording with various artists, including Twyla Paris, Susan Ashton, Roseanne Cash, Andreas Blackwood and Company, David Meese, Rusty Goodman, Bruce Carroll, the Rock and Roll Reunion, which featured the Four Tops, the Temptations, and Martha Raye. That had to have been a cool gig. Out of the Gray, Ty Herndon, Girls Next Door, Jesse Dixon, Chris Eaton, and Clay Cross. By 1995, Mark was recording and producing full-time. A few of the artists Mark has recorded with include Charlie McCoy, Dolly Parton, Dottie Rambo, Chet Atkins, Michael Martin Murphey, J.D. Sumner, Roy Clark, Randy Travis, Russ Taff, the Happy Goodmans, the Gaithers, Legacy 5, Miranda Lambert, and many others. In 1996, Mark and his wife Wanda Vick Burchfield, who is also an in-demand session musician and a member of the Grand Ole Opry House Band, opened a commercial recording studio in Nashville called The Watershed, which is an amazing place. I've been there, done some tracks there. If you need a studio in Nashville and you want some A-team players, call Mark.
Good to be here.
So let's go back a little ways. When you came to town, we talked a while back, and you told a little story about the Roseanne Cash audition and Larry London.
Yes.
So, and that whole situation. If you could tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. That was early stage on moving to Nashville. I, along with my two brothers, John and Benji, moved to Nashville in '82 to work with a gospel group. And basically, we're living on somebody's living room floor for the first month. We were broke. I had this old GMC truck, pickup truck that was all rusted. And anyway, so no money. About a month into that gig, the leader of the gigs came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, I've got some news. We can't afford to have a band. Our venues that we're playing, we just don't have the dough." So I said, "Wow, so that means no more playing?" He said, "No, we can't afford to have you guys." I said, "Okay, what do you say?" So I had about a year of where I was just in go mode in terms of survival. And so I made a flyer. This was just to get immediate money to pay for rent and food.
Absolutely.
Yeah, put food on the table. So I made this flyer and went to Kinko's and made 50 copies of this flyer. And I went across the street to the Kroger parking lot. I put these 50 copies on people's windshield. And one person called me. And that person that called me was Dixie Gamble, who worked at Warner Brothers.
Wow.
And she called and said, "Mark, I've got a house that needs painting." I said, "That is fantastic." And we knocked out that job, and I was able to make rent money and food money. In the meantime, I'm trying to meet people, trying to connect, trying to get a gig, right? Trying to play. The only playing I was doing at that time at all was at church, like in the church band, okay?
And that was probably not a paid gig or very well paid
it wasn't paid at all.
Right.
I wasn't making anything from that, just with some friends, and that was it. So I started becoming a little, honestly, discouraged. I'm like, man, I moved here to get into the music business.
And here you are painting houses.
And here I am painting houses and doing odd jobs. So they'd call, "Hey, can you come and sweep off our back porch or whatever?" Pays $25.
Right. Hey, in those days you're probably like, "Hey, I'll do it.
I'll
25
take
bucks.
it. I'll take it. So I didn't say no very often. So I'm like, wow, I hope there's more to this than this.
This is the big time.
This is the big time.
And you're sweeping floors for 25 bucks.
And I'm seeing other people and all these other players and stuff really busy. And I'm thinking, wow, and I'm not doing really hardly anything. So I start getting discouraged. Well, later on, I get this call from a guitarist by the name of Brent Rowan.
Yeah.
And Brent says, Mark, I referred you to a gig. It's with Roseanne Cash.
Wow.
She is getting a new bass player because Michael Rhodes is moving to LA.
Wow.
So I said, oh, I love her stuff.
Yeah.
I would love to audition for that. And really, that was the gig, the coolest gig in Nashville at the time.
Yeah.
In the early 80s. It was the coolest gig, all-star band. And so I said, I'd be happy to. And I said, Brent, how do I get this gig? I mean, I would really like to nail it. He said, go out and buy every album that she's ever done, every album, and learn all the songs.
Be prepared.
Be prepared. So I did that. I went out and bought her LPs that drained me. I didn't really have the money to buy them, but
There
somehow.
goes that's porch sweeping money.
That's right. That's right. That bought one of the albums. And so I sat down for hours a day, and learned her material. And I had a new respect for her producer and bass player, Emery Gordy Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Another Nashville legend.
Wow, what a talented, incredible bass player and producer.
Sure.
Right? So I learned his parts. I thought, boy, these are great parts. And so I did my best to emulate what Emery Gordy Jr. was doing. So here comes audition day, and it was a cattle call. Everybody was called to this audition.
And you got to imagine, in a cattle call in Nashville, there's probably a lot of great musicians. It's not just, guys, whoever.
Right.
I mean, good.
And I
Lord.
recognized in line some of these guys, and I'm just thinking, what am I doing here? Nobody knows me. And I'm like, again, fear started setting into me, and I'm like, I don't need to be here. Anyway, I stayed in line, literally stood in line till it was my turn, and I'm getting nervous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this going to work out? How is this going to go? And they're like, okay, next. And I walk in a room. So in the room is, of course, Roseanne Cash. And I look around. Vince Gill is on guitar. Hank DeVito is playing steel. Dave Ennis and Tony Brown are on keyboards.
So they basically got the B team, right?
Right.
For those of you who don't know, these are all Nashville legends. I mean, you've probably heard of Vince Gill. Tony Brown is a record producer, played with Elvis, for goodness sakes.
Right. And then on the drums is Larry London.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go.
That's not intimidating.
No, not a bit.
That's a solid rhythm section.
They were all so sweet, so nice, and looked at me and smiled and said, hey, Mark, and just made me feel at ease the best they could. And I thought, I was the last person in line, and I thought, maybe they haven't found the guy yet, because she really wants to hear me play. And my accolades and my hat's off to Brent Rowan. I think he gave me a good plug to Roseanne. I think he gave me a good plug.
And maybe that's why they had you last, is because they wanted to just double check and make sure. And then, by the time that was kind of sealed the deal.
Maybe so.
I don't know.
Maybe
just
so.
Saying. Just saying.
Well, okay. So Roseanne's like, well, what should we play? And I'm like, oh, please play something that I'm familiar with. And I think she said, how about 7 Year Ache? And I'm like, I know this one. It was important for me to look good to Larry London. That was very important to me. So Larry's counting it off, and he counts it off like it's the last song he's ever going to play in his life.
Like the people in the next studio could hear
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Yes. Very aggressive. His count was right on, like right in the groove, right in the pocket. Before we even started playing, you could feel the song.
Oh, that's great.
By his count. And so we start playing, and fortunately, I'd written out some Nashville number charts, and they're like, hey, use your charts if you want to. And I had them there on a stand in case I needed them. So we're playing, and it's feeling great. To me, it's feeling great. We played 5 songs. So they actually let me join them in 5 songs. I thought, man, this can't be going horribly, because I don't think we'd be playing 5 tunes. So.
Yeah, if it was going bad, it'd be like, oh, that was nice. Okay, well, we're good. You know, I'll see you later.
I'll have
Maybe
my person have their person call you.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, don't call us, we'll call you.
Yes.
So after the 5th song, we went through, played. Roseanne walked up to Larry, and I heard them I saw them talking. And so she came back to me and she said, "Oh, Mark, things felt great. Larry really likes your pocket and your feel." She said, "Can we do this again and set up with this team of players?" She wanted me to meet her husband, and her husband was Rodney Crowell.
Right.
Yeah. So I said, I'd be happy to, of course. So about a week later, we set up a time where Larry, Vince, everybody came back, the band, and we played again. And I got to meet Rodney, and we, I think, played the same 5 songs maybe. Maybe one of the songs was a new one. It went well again. Things felt great. And so she was like, "Sounds great, Mark. We'll be in touch with you." And her band leader came up to me afterwards and said, "Mark, you got the gig."
Wow.
He said, and that was Hank. Hank was the band leader. He said, "You got the gig if you want it." I said, "I want it." I said, "I want it, big time."
Excellent.
So about a week later, I hadn't heard anything. I was like, "Man, this is weird." So I called Hank DeVito. He said, "Well, call Roseanne." And he said, "That'd be fine if you want to give her a call." So I did. And she said, "Oh, Mark, my bass player decided he's not moving out to LA. Michael Rhodes, who's an amazing, who was an amazing bass player. Absolutely incredible guy, an amazing player. One of my favorite bass players, actually, in Nashville. I said, "Wow, that's a shame, but I'm glad." I said, "That makes sense that Michael is still doing it. He's your guy." I said, "I understand that." She said, "I will recommend you for anything." She said, "You keep my phone numbers. I'll recommend you for any gig that comes up." She said, "You're a great player." She said, "I'm sorry this didn't work out, but I'm sure you understand." I said, I 100% understand.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the gig, but I got the gig.
Right.
At the same time.
Yeah.
It was still an amazing experience, and I got to know Larry London a little bit, and that was huge to me.
Yeah, my gosh, what a legend.
That was huge.
That alone had to have been great.
That was great.
So one of the reasons that we're all here is because we love cigars, and we're here at the Mission Cigar and Social in Spring Hill, Tennessee. So I got to ask you, what's your favorite cigar, Mark?
I would have to say that would be the Perdomo 20th anniversary.
Nice.
And that's the Connecticut wrapper.
All right.
Great. But Mark, what are you smoking now?
Currently, I'm smoking a Plasencia. It's the white label here. It's a very creamy, smooth cigar. It's one of the best cigars I've smoked.
Is this the first one you ever had?
Yes.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's great.
A friend recommended me to it today, just this morning. So
Very cool.
JR, what you smoking?
Well, I'm smoking an Avo Classic No. 3. What about you?
I got the Perdomo 12-year.
It's another
Great cigar, Maduro.
Yeah.
Great cigar.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about basses. You have I'm sure, a pretty sizable bass collection.
Fairly sizable.
How many basses do you think you own?
Ooh, maybe a dozen-ish.
Wow, okay.
I've got a couple of uprights, which I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that, but I do play a fair amount of upright.
Yes, and you are a monster upright player.
Well, thank
See,
you.
I'm a bass player as well. I'm not like this guy, but
No, you're a great bass player.
but upright is a very, very difficult thing to master, and he's absolutely mastered that.
Well-
if you ever need upright bass tracks, he's your guy.
Thank you for
Don't
saying
call me.
that.
I'll just tell you to call Mark. So, all right. So, what are your favorite? If you had to pick one, like let's say God forbid, there was a fire in the studio and you could only grab one bass.
Wow.
What would it be out of your collection?
I would say the one I end up playing more on recordings would be It's a hybrid, and it's a new bass, actually, that the Fender Custom Shop has come out with, and it's a jazz precision bass,
Oh, wow.
all in one. It's got a jazz neck, precision head, precision body,
Yes.
and it's, of course, that P bass sound.
Yeah.
Is it the blue one you brought here?
That's the blue one.
Oh, yeah, man, that's great.
Which they'll see on. We'll talk about in the future.
Okay.
A song we did together here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, what's the rarest bass you've got?
The rarest would be a 1969 P bass.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that bass as well. It's just that old P sound. And a recent bass I got that I'm loving, I was at a bass shop recently getting one of my basses worked on, and I saw up on the wall, I said, "Hey, Brian, what is that, man?" He said, "That is a 1969 jazz bass fretless." Fretless. And I said, "Wow, that's amazing. Do you mind if I play it?" He said, "No, take it down and play it." So I played it for about 2 minutes unplugged. You know, I always like to play a bass unplugged before I plug it in. And the neck felt amazing, just amazing. It just played so easy. The flow was incredible, and it was
Well,
real
and you being
even.
an upright player, I mean, you're obviously very used to playing without frets. If you don't play bass and you're a guy like me, you can pick up a fretless bass and sound like, oh, look, he's pretty good. Until you start playing with other people, because then you realize how out of tune I'm playing. Intonation is everything with those things.
Now, I will say on this bass, it does have fret markers.
That still wouldn't help me.
But you still need to be right on position-wise.
Right.
Even with the markers, if you're off a little bit, you'll hear the lack of intonation. So I played it for about 2 minutes. I said, I'll take it.
So now this is like.
And you didn't
this-
even
this-
plug it in.
No, didn't plug it in.
Wow.
I did not plug it in.
So when you do that, are you feeling for like how the bass resonates through the wood before you hear it through an amp?
Yes, and seeing if the notes, even unplugged, are even all the way down up to the top of the neck.
Okay.
You want evenness. You don't want any dead spots on especially a recording bass.
Oh, yeah. That's the
So,
worst.
as you well know.
Yes. So that's not a reissue. That's a 1969.
It's all original.
Wow.
And a quick story with that bass. So I ended up buying it, took it home. First, I got permission from my wife.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. And she said, "Yeah, that sounds like a good investment for you." And she said, "I know you'll play it." So on the way home, I stopped at the studio, Watershed Recording Studio, and I was just there to look at something. I think it was a bathroom that needed cleaning or something.
Still painting out.
Yeah. That's right. So I'm in there, and the producer that's working there, he's doing overdubs with Doyle Grisham, the steel player who played with Jimmy Buffett for 50 years.
That's awesome.
One of my favorite steel players.
Wow.
And Doyle was doing overdubs, and Eric, the producer, Eric Paul, he hollered up and said, "Hey, Mark, do you have your upright here?" And I said, "No, they're at home." He said, "Have you got any basses here?" I said, "Yeah, I've got a couple here." So Doyle said, "Do you by chance have a fretless with you?" I thought,
Yes, I do.
"Can you hang on a second?" And I went out into my car, and I hadn't even plugged the bass in yet.
Wow.
And I said, "I just bought this." And I said, "Can we try it?" And he said, "Yeah, let's try it." So I plugged it in, and that was the bass that went on the
Yeah.
recording that day.
Oh, wow.
So it was already starting to pay for itself that afternoon.
That's great.
That's very
Isn't that
cool.
fun?
That's awesome. That's a great story.
So,
Who, out of all time, is your favorite bass player?
John, that is a very hard question to answer. But I remember when I was 16, I was making a trip from Illinois with my dad to East Tennessee, where he and Mom had a place. And we stopped at a truck stop, and we go in there to eat, and they had a jukebox, a big, beautiful lit up jukebox there playing songs. on comes this song. It was a Motown tune. I wasn't familiar with Motown at the time.
How old were you?
I was 16.
16. Wow.
And I was sitting there listening, and I just stopped eating, and the bass player playing on the song was mesmerizing to me. The part he was playing, I'd never heard bass playing like that ever in my life. I said, Dad, listen to that. And he looks up at me and he's eating. He said, what? I said, listen to that bass there. He said, yeah. He smiled and he went on to eat. And I just sat there and listened. And I thought, that's what I want to do. There have been so many bass players that have encouraged me and inspired me to play bass.
Sure.
But I'd have to say the guy that really started things really rolling, other than my brother Jonathan, who really encouraged me to play bass, I would have to say it was James Jamerson.
James Jamerson, man, legend.
Legend.
I mean, yeah.
How many hits has that guy played on?
Well, see, one of my favorite bass players in the world is Paul McCartney.
Oh, yeah.
Because of his melodic playing. But Paul actually was very influenced by James Jamerson.
That's right.
And it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
anyway.
Didn't Jamerson play it with like just one finger?
They-
Like he didn't do the.
That's
was like
right.
just one
They
finger.
called him the hook. It was the hook because
Yeah.
it was one finger, but he could get around that with that finger very quickly.
And I think the same set of strings was on all the hits.
Oh, yeah.
I think
well,
it
one of
was.
his basses. Have
Yeah.
you been to the Musicians Hall of Fame downtown Nashville?
Yes.
It's amazing. And James, one of his basses is hanging
One of his
there. I
basses
just sat
is
there and
hanging.
stared at it for about 20
Oh, I
minutes.
love it.
Man,
I love it.
That's great. All right, so let me ask you a question. Do you have, or what is your most memorable moment either on stage or in the studio? That could be working with, one of your heroes or just, a specific venue, something like that. Anything come to mind?
There's a few different that come to mind. I would have to say, my wife Wanda and I had a studio over in Hermitage years ago. It since then has moved to Nashville. I was working on an album project, playing bass. This was mostly upright bass on this project. It was a bluegrass project for an artist by the name of Pam Gadd. And I met Pam through my wife Wanda. They were in a all-girl band called Wild Rose back in the 90s that James Stroud produced.
Oh, cool.
And they were on Capitol Records. They had a couple of big hits, up for a Grammy or two. Anyway, Pam lined up this really great band to play on this record. One of the songs that she did was a Dolly Parton song called Applejack.
Okay.
So they did a duet, and after we tracked it, Dolly came in our studio, invited by Pam, and so I got to meet Dolly, and she came in our little basement home studio. Just when she walked through the door, I got to say, I was like, wow, there's Dolly.
Yeah.
And she's such a class act.
Yes.
I mean, in every respect, a wonderful singer and writer
In person.
and
Yeah.
What an amazing person. So I got to hear her sing on the song that I played on called Applejack.
Wow.
And she went through the song maybe once or twice and nailed the part. Just nailed
awesome.
it.
That is so cool.
And just a little tidbit that was fun. She brought a friend of hers, and the friend brought all this food and was cooking a Southern breakfast in the back lounge. We had this real small little lounge in the back. And after the second take, which she's probably singing for a half hour at the most, Dolly said, well, I'm hungry. Anybody want to eat? So we all went back and
so
had a
cool.
great time of fellowship and ate.
Eating breakfast with Dolly.
Yeah, eating
Man.
breakfast with Dolly.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
So, Mark, if you were stuck on an island, right?
Okay.
Dropped off there in the morning, not being picked up the next day, stranded, and you could only have 3 cigars, 1 bottle of whatever you want to drink, and 1 album. What would those be?
24 hours of
24 hours.
I would have to say, cigar-wise, I'd have to say the Perdomo 20th anniversary would be one. This new cigar here,
Plasencia?
the Plasencia,
Yeah.
white label, and maybe perhaps a type of Padron cigar.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
How about drink?
Drink-wise, you know what? I'd have to say I'm a big brewed tea lover.
Okay.
So I'd have to say a really good Louisiane or something like that tea, unsweet mixed with sweet, with a little bit of lemon.
Southern boy.
Oh, yeah, that's
Sweet
right.
tea.
It's coming out. Sweet and unsweet. Yeah. And I think on that little desert island, I would love to hear Christopher Cross's Sailing album.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Produced by Michael Amardian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, on that song is Sailing.
Yes. Well, and I mean, if you're sitting there on
There
the,
you go.
listening to the ocean waves crash, you got a nice cool drink and a
Yes.
great cigar. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a bad place to be for 24 hours.
Absolutely.
You know, the cruise ship is coming back the next morning to pick you up, so you're okay. You're not gonna die.
You're not too
You know?
worried.
That's great. All right. So, so John and I, you know, doing this whole music and cigars thing, one of the things that we wanted to do was get people that are regulars here that come to the mission that enjoy cigars and who are great musicians and songwriters and somehow twist their arm and get them to play some music with us. So we've recorded a song. It's actually a Pink Floyd song. It's called Have a Cigar. There you go. Intentionally.
Stick with the
kind
same
of a
thing.
weird song, but again, it was called Have a Cigar. So I'm like, John, we got to do the song. He's like, yeah. So we talked Mark Burchfield into playing the bass track, and he just absolutely killed it. I mean, I knew he would. But we're going to play some of that for you at the end of this video, and you can check that out. And we recorded most of that here in the mission. Actually, where we're sitting right now, we set up drums.
Yep.
Set up John's kit. We, of course, had to wait till after hours. Whenever it was so loud. But this room sounds great. And Mark, man, thanks again for doing that.
It was a joy. I loved it.
And we'll have to do some more. If you're in. If you're up for it.
I'm ready.
I'd love to get him on Upright on something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It'd be fun.
Also, if you wouldn't mind, leave us some comments and tell us what you want to see and maybe what you want to hear, maybe a specific song that we can do, or if you have any ideas for us, or, you know, you don't like my hat, well, too bad. But anyways, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.